everyone, welcome back to my series of videos on vocal health. Woo! This is video number 2 in what will probably be a 4-part series on vocal health. Video number 1 is already up, of course, it's video number 1, so it's up. That video is about the habits that you can get into kind of on a day-to-day basis to support your vocal health and keep from accidentally ripping your voice to shreds without realizing it. This video is about vocal technique, but if you haven't watched the first video, I recommend that you go and do that right now, because you can sing with the best technique ever, but if you are shredding your voice throughout the rest of the day, it's not going to do you that much good. So, if you haven't seen it, pause this video, go watch that video, and then come back to me. I'll wait. Alright! Yay! Welcome back. Now that we're all on the same page, let's talk about vocal technique. So the way that you use your voice when you sing has obviously a huge impact on your vocal health, how you sound both in the moment but also long term. You can be singing with bad technique and love the way you sound, but 5 or 10 years down the road, you're not going to be able to produce that sound anymore because you will have killed your voice by singing with bad technique. Maybe you're saying, Alex, I don't want to change the way I sing. I sound great. I respect that. That's great. I'm not saying you need to change the way you sound, but you should give some thought to the technique that you're using to produce that sound so that years down the road, you can still produce that sound that you like. When you're singing with good vocal technique, it shouldn't just sound good, it should feel good, right? I mean, singing with good vocal technique should feel really nice. It shouldn't wear you out. It shouldn't feel rough, right? It shouldn't hurt. That's kind of what we're getting at today. Singing with a nice sound, but also singing in a way that's going to feel good and that's going to preserve the health of our voice for years to come. So a lot of us, when we think about good vocal technique, we sort of think in terms of a checklist, right? Like, here is the list of things that I need to do and keep in mind in order to sing correctly and make a good sound and take care of myself, right? 1, 2, 3. I'm going to hold my tongue like this. I'm going to stand like this. I'm going to release my throat. I am going to give you some checklist things to kind of keep in mind, but the too long didn't watch version is healthy vocal technique is all about relaxation. Healthy vocal technique is what your body wants to do. A body that is healthy and at ease and relaxed is going to sort of automatically, naturally fall into the right positions and do the right things and do all of those checklists, or a lot of those checklist items, kind of automatically. On the flip side, if we're holding a lot of tension in our bodies or in various parts of our bodies, some of those checklist items are going to be very difficult for us to do. Even if we're thinking about them, even if we're being very conscious about them, we're going to be fighting our bodies to do those if we're holding tension in certain areas of our bodies. So the single best thing that you can do for your vocal health is to learn to relax. And I'm serious. Like, if you need to take up meditation, if you want to do some yoga, like, do that. Because when we hold tension in certain areas of our bodies, it really makes it impossible to do the right things with our bodies. And I mean, do think about the checklist items, but if you keep yourself relaxed, some of them will become automatics, some of them will be really easy when you do them, and you won't be fighting against yourself. So I hold a lot of tension here and in my neck. A lot of people hold tension in their jaws. I know somebody who talks about having tension held in her diaphragm, right? This is something that a lot of us don't even think about because we can breathe, it's working fine. But when you're a singer and you need to breathe really deeply, all of those muscular systems are really important, and being able to sort of maximize movement when you're holding muscle tension in places that you don't even know to think about, that's going to impact your vocal health. So that's going to be a big part of what we're talking about today. That's going to be a big part of what I want you to do, is really kind of like get in touch with yourself, do some yoga, meditate, and start to think about really relaxing, right? It's important. Step number 1, chill out, relax on a muscular level. So now we're going to go through some things to kind of check in with and keep in mind before you sing. And it's all going to come back to that relaxation piece, right? It's all going to come back to relaxation. Item 1, stretch first. Stretching is a really good way to kind of warm your body up and create the space that you're going to need in order to breathe well and produce sound well. So some stretches that I like to do: a forward fold, right? Just sort of like bend over at the waist and try to touch your toes. Or don't try to touch your toes. I don't actually care if you can touch your toes. That's not the point. The point is to get a nice big stretch all the way through the back to kind of like, make some room for those lungs to expand, right? It's all about the stretch. So just bend at the waist, hang limply for a while. If you want to like bounce or rock from side to side, that's good too. I actually don't care if you can touch your toes. Going the opposite direction, right? Like stretch back. If you can stretch over a chair, maybe a lower chair than what I have, but this works too, right? Just stretch way back. Alternately, you can kind of interlace your fingers. I wonder if I can show you this in this position. Probably not, but like that, right? So interlace your fingers and then like bend back. We're bending back, right? Anyway, that was very awkward. So interlace your fingers behind you and sort of like what we're doing is we're stretching out this sort of heart area, right? We're pulling our shoulders back, making a lot of space here through the chest. This is basically the opposite of the forward fold, right? So we're opening up our chest. We've opened up our back. Now we're opening up our chest. Go from side to side too, right? Like do some of these side stretches, right? Except slower. Like really take your time. When you're doing these stretches, breathe into the stretches. This is what the yoga videos that I do always say to do. Breathe into the stretch. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create length. We're trying to create space here in the torso so that things are a little bit more loose and so that we have that space to expand when we breathe. Item 2, I want you to think about your posture. When you practice, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stand, feet like hip width apart, nice planted, grounded, good solid foundation there. Stand up straight. And what I mean by that is, like you've probably heard this image before. If you haven't, here it is. Imagine that there's a string that's sort of like tied to the base of your pelvis and it's going all the way up through the inside of you, kind of like along your spine basically, or maybe like right in front of your spine. And it's just pulling you up and it exits through the crown of your head, right? So this isn't like a stretch, right? You're not trying to be as tall as possible. This is just sort of like a gentle lengthening and sort of an alignment, right? The string is very straight and it's sort of just gently pulling you up and into alignment. So you're not hunched. You're not like artificially sticking your chest out or anything like that. You're just in very, very gentle alignment. Once you get into this alignment, I want you to just sort of like take a second, and then I want you to shrug your shoulders up and roll them back. Open up that chest and then just sort of drop them down and back. Let them drop, right? I don't want you to artificially stand like this, holding a lot of tension in your back to keep those shoulders back. Just drop them. When you're nice and straight, we've opened up the chest, right? We've got lots of room in our torso to breathe. Take a nice, nice deep breath, right? You might compare, hunch over and take a deep breath. Let it out. And now do that sort of alignment thing. Stand up nice and straight. Shoulders back and down and dropped and relaxed. Now take a nice deep breath from the diaphragm. You should be able to get more air that way. And it should feel better, right? It just feels good. You're getting so much oxygen. It's what your body literally needs to run on. Yeah, so good. And I want you to stand when you practice. Now, it is possible to have this nice alignment and produce a really good, healthy sound when you're sitting. It's possible to do this from the floor, right? Like we've all seen musicals and operas where a singer is like dramatically on the floor, reaching towards the audience. Oh my God, I dreamed a dream, right? Like that's a thing, and you can sing very well like that. But it's much easier and it's much more natural to achieve that alignment when you're standing and when you've got a nice, good, firm grounding through your feet. When we sit, I don't know, maybe this is because we're so used to offices or something like that, but when we sit, we just sort of are used to hunching. So over time, that's kind of naturally where we're going to go. Whereas when we stand, it's a little bit easier to kind of be conscious about our posture and that alignment, shoulders back, nice, lots of space. So I want you to practice standing so that this alignment, this nice posture and this space through the torso starts to feel natural and automatic. So that when you are called on to sing from a seated position or some dramatic reclined position, your torso will automatically come into alignment because that is what it's used to doing, because you have been practicing in this nice standing posture for so long that that's what your body wants to do. The other thing about singing with good posture is that when we are hunched over or kind of slouching, or if we're doing something weird with our shoulders, our body is going to inadvertently hold tension. Like that will lead to us holding tension in our bodies that's going to interfere with the rest of the technique items that we're going to talk about. If you're standing with good posture, you're going to have a much freer experience muscularly, not just in terms of air, but in terms of all the rest of the muscles that go into vocal production. Whereas if you're hunched over, little pockets of tension start to develop that are going to hold you back. Now we're going to talk about breathing. We're in a really good position to breathe. Fundamentally, you want to breathe from the diaphragm and not from the chest. And the diaphragm is, you're going to lose my face here for a second. Your diaphragm's like right here, right? It's like right at the base of the rib cage. Your lungs are here, your diaphragm is here. So you're kind of breathing into your belly. What happens is your diaphragm drops when you breathe in. That creates space in your lungs that the air rushes in to fill. That's how breathing works. Woo, that's how breathing works. So, you can think about breathing into your belly. If you're breathing into your chest, I can't even do it now. That's a good sign. So when I'm freaked out about something, I breathe from my chest, right? If I'm, nervous, like some people get before performances, I do breathe from my chest. The good news is when I'm thinking about it, apparently I'm incapable of breathing from my chest. So put a hand on your chest, put a hand on your belly. If your chest is rising up and down, wrong. This is one of those checklist items, right? If your hand on your belly is going up and down when you breathe, great. That's how you want to do it. So your belly should expand when you breathe in, and then it should move toward your spine. It should suck in just a little bit when you breathe out, when you're singing, right? Once you got the hang of that, there's some kind of fine tuning that you can do. Taking big belly breaths is great, but there are some visualizations that help me take even fuller breaths. In one of my very first voice lessons with my current teacher, Crosley Hahn, she's great if you're in DC, she suggested that I think about breathing into my back, right? So breathe into my belly, but also kind of into my back. And that was really helpful. That helps me get a much fuller breath because I'm not just, maybe it's activating more of my diaphragm or something like that, but breathing into my belly and my back, I get a much fuller and more supported breath. Another thing, and this one I'm going to credit to Allison Mondell of Sacred Voice Studios. The visualization that she suggested is, just go with me here. Get in touch with your pelvis, right? And think about your pelvic floor, right? So this is when, just go with me here. You know when you have to go to the bathroom, but you can't go to the bathroom, so you kind of clench yourself? That's your pelvic floor activating. That's what that is. So I'm not telling you to clench. Don't ever clench anything. Clenching is the opposite of what I want you to do. But get in touch with that pelvic floor, and when you breathe in, almost think of your pelvic floor as like coming up to meet your diaphragm. Obviously, that's not literally going to happen. So those are two visualizations that you might use. Once you've really got the hang of those belly breaths versus the chest breaths, think of breathing into your back along with your belly, and think of your diaphragm and your pelvic floor almost coming up to kiss each other, which is a really, really weird thing to say on YouTube. But hey, it works. It can help you breathe good. Do that. Yeah. Item 3. We're going to release the tension in the throat. Probably the number one thing that people do that wrecks their voices is they push from the throat. We talked about, pushing in from your diaphragm when you're breathing out, when you're singing, when that air is coming out of your mouth. That's where your power should come from. It should never come from your throat. That means you're clenching things and you're going to hurt yourself. In order to sort of tell if you're doing that, it's nice to just sort of put a hand on your throat while you sing. Obviously, you're going to be able to feel some vibrations because you're making noise, but you'll also be able to feel when things clench up, right? If you can feel the veins popping out of your throat, or if you can feel things suddenly tense up, that's when you want to take a step back. Think to yourself, soften the throat, release, relax. I often find it easy and helpful to just sort of sway my head back and forth a little bit, because if I've got that movement in my throat, it's a lot harder to clench up, right? When we're clenched, it's harder to move. So if we're moving, that kind of reminds us to sort of stay loose, right? Another thing to think about is I hold a lot of tension in my shoulders, and that bleeds into the neck. So if you are like me and you hold a lot of tension in your upper back and your shoulders, I don't know, get a massage, get somebody to give you a back rub, work on that. But also look out for it when you're singing, right? I will be so relaxed and I'll be singing with such great technique, and then I'll get up to a super high note and all of a sudden I'm like, ah! Right? And my shoulders are up by my ears and my voice teacher yells at me and I am yelling at you. Don't let that happen. Practice in front of a mirror so that you can see when that happens, and just relax. Just keep the tension out of your throat. And if you keep the tension out of your shoulders, that will keep it from bleeding into your throat. It's really important. All right, continuing our journey up the body of vocal production, we're going to talk about the jaw. Clenching your jaw is really, really common. I clench my jaw. I clench everything, but that includes my jaw, right? When people think about clenching their jaws, they think about right? My mouth is so freaking closed right now, it's clenched, right? But did you know it's possible to clench your jaw while it's open? Yeah, it is. I can have my mouth open and still have a ton of tension right here. So what we want to go for is kind of just let it hang open. All right, act like you're drool is coming out of your mouth, and you're just For me, it helps to actually kind of this is how you get zits, but it's also how you sing good. So you gotta pick, right? No. Be conscious of the space back here in your jaw. Let there be space. Let it relax. Don't hold your jaw. Don't hold any tension in your jaw. Just kind of let it. The other thing that you might look out for is, particularly if you're singing runs of notes where you don't have syllables breaking up the notes, you might find that you're using your jaw as sort of an articulation mechanism. So instead of you might be put a hand right here, and if you're feeling a little catch or a little click between notes, try to keep that from happening, because that's tension, right? That's your jaw clenching and resetting between every note, and it's not necessary. You don't need to do that to articulate between notes. It might feel a little bit messy at first because you're so used to doing that, but you'll find that you don't need that tension in order to mark the space between notes. And in fact, you're going to achieve a much smoother, a much more fluid and flexible line if you're not relying on jaw tension for articulation. All right, so we're moving up from the jaw to the tongue. The tongue is an area where people, especially when they sing, hold a lot of tension and they never think about it, right? How often do you think of what you're doing with your tongue, or how you're holding your tongue, or what your tongue is doing? But your tongue actually can be very tense. Here's where you want your tongue to be. Tip of the tongue should be just very lightly resting against the back of the teeth, kind of right where the teeth and the gums meet. If you find that you're pulling your tongue back into the mouth, that is creating tension in your tongue. That's going to bleed down to your throat. It's going to make weird things happen in your mouth to your air passage. It's going to be weird. The rest of the tongue, think fluffy, right? Like your tongue is a fluffy white cloud. It's kind of weird, but it should almost be touching the roof of your mouth. A lot of times what I will do when I'm practicing or warming up is I'll go sort of in between notes. I'll go ya, 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 or even nga, 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 right? Because that's how high your tongue might need to be, right? So it should be kind of like up and fluffy. I don't want you to like overthink it and like force it up there, and because the whole name of the game, right, is like releasing tension and being relaxed. But turns out when you do that to your tongue, it's like, maybe you've seen a picture of the inside of somebody's mouth and you're like, that's ridiculous. Your tongue isn't that huge, but it is. Turns out it is. It almost fills up your mouth, right? So think of it as like a big fluffy pillow inside your mouth. Right? It's gross, but do it. Some people have the bad habit of doing the opposite, right? Somewhere along the line, I developed the habit of almost like literally having kind of like a dip in my tongue, whereas it should be kind of fluffy in my mouth, right? Oh, fluffy tongue. I almost have like a hollow in it. I think somewhere I got the idea that I need to create more space for the air or the sound or something, which is completely false, totally false. When you dip your tongue, you do that by creating a lot of tension in your tongue, which bleeds down into your throat and throws everything off, and it's a bad scene. Another thing that some people will do, particularly on vowels like E or eh, but especially E. So do this, sing E for me. Thank you. Now, what did your tongue do? Did the sides of your tongue touch your molars? Did they touch your teeth? Did you go ee, right? Or did it stay pretty fluffy and narrow and go ee? Because that's what you want, right? Don't spread your tongue, right? Just like when we have a hollow in our tongue, if we spread our tongue really flat, that is creating tension in our tongue, and it's creating a very sort of diffuse space for the air to go through. Whereas if we go with a nice kind of like narrow, supple, relaxed tongue, this is gonna get weird. Narrow, supple, relaxed tongue, that creates a much sort of more direct, focused column of air, which is going to create a better sound, and the lack of tension in your tongue is also going to keep the tension out of your throat, which is going to keep you a lot healthier. So do that. All right, we're traveling up the vocal production tract. We're at the tongue. Where are we going to go from now? Where are we going to go from here? Right now we're going to talk about the voice. And where do we want to aim the voice? We want to aim it right at the front of our face. In some cases, with very, very, very high notes, you might aim it like up through the head. What I don't want to do from a vocal health perspective, what I don't want to do is let it fall back into my throat. So I don't want to be back here. I don't want to be like having everything ring around in my soft palate. I want everything to be right out here. Fundamentally, don't shout, right? If you're singing with good technique, you shouldn't need to shout to be heard. And shouting is bad for you, so don't shout. Resonate, right? You want to feel those vibrations in your face bones. That's what you're going for. That's one of the things that makes singing feel so good. I mean, like I said before, singing with good vocal technique feels good, right? Singing should feel like butter, right? It should feel like velvet or silk, right? It shouldn't feel like sandpaper scratching together in your throat. It should feel so good you don't want to stop doing it. Many of us who have sung in ensembles, I hope you've had this experience. But one of the coolest experiences to have is when you're all singing together and you're just all so freaking on pitch and like locked in together that you feel the music in your face. Your bones are ringing along with the music that you're making. That's it. Man, that's it. That's the best feeling in the world, and it means that you're putting it all right here where it needs to be. Here's your homework. Every time before you practice, I want you to stand there. I want you to go through what we talked about to like have that good posture, right? Alignment, shoulders down and back. And then I want you to just quickly check in with your body. And we're going to go in this order. Pelvis, right? I want you to check in with your pelvis. I want you to think, am I clenching down there? Am I like clenching my butt? Am I like holding tension down there? If so, just release it, right? Just relax. Then I want you to check in with your diaphragm, right? Right here below your sternum, base of your rib cage. Are you holding tension there, or are you nice and relaxed? Are you taking nice, easy belly breaths? Then I want you to move up to your shoulders, which is where most of us hold most of our tension, if we're being honest with ourselves. Think about consciously just kind of releasing, letting go, and letting them just kind of droop down and back. Then think about your throat. Move your head back and forth. Release any tension that you've got there. Keep a hand on it while you sing if you need to. Then think about your jaw, right back here, right? Like right here. Are you clenching? Or is there some nice space, right? Is it nice and relaxed? And then I want you to think about your tongue. Just relax your tongue. I find that when you relax your throat, that really helps to relax your tongue. Go all the way up, check in with yourself. Pelvis, diaphragm, shoulders, throat, jaw, tongue, and just relax. But this is a good foundation to build on, right? If you do this, then whatever else you learn, you will be able to do it for years and years and years and years, and singing will feel as good as it sounds. Thanks. Be good to your voices. Bye.